wander until that generation dies. The first 2 years they were building the tabernacle. God was giving them the Torah at Mount Sinai. He was preparing them. It was just he was preparing them. But it was in the second year that they disobey, and they have to wander for 38 years because of their unbelief and disobedience.
Wow.
Okay? And so Yeshua is saying to this man, do you want to be like the generation who, because of their unbelief, literally died in the wilderness and could not enter in to the promise? Or are you going to have faith, rise, take up your mat and walk, and enter in to the salvation, into the healing that I have for you? And so Yeshua was testing this man, because 38 is also the numerical value of the Hebrew phrase libo, which means his heart. So Yeshua was testing this man like Israel was tested in the wilderness for those 38 years to see what was in their heart. Was he going to have unbelief rooted in hopelessness, or was he going to have faith and find healing and wholeness? Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but faith faith is a tree of life, right?
Wow. Well, you know, part of the interesting thing about that story, because it's almost offensive for Jesus to walk up to a man who's been sick for 38 years and say, do you want to get well? I mean, it's like, well, you know, I wouldn't say duh, because, it's Jesus, but it's like, sure he does. But honestly, there was a question of whether he wanted to be well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because I think it's, from my own experience, I mean, you've been in ministry for so long, right? Longer than I have. But I mean, the reality is that oftentimes when we've gone through traumas or sickness for so long, they begin to shape a core part of our identity.
Absolutely.
It becomes part and parcel of who we are. And it becomes very hard to separate, who we've been from where we're becoming, right? This is, again, the children of Israel when they come out of Egypt. They saw signs and wonders. They get manna from heaven, and they're complaining about the food in the desert and talking about going back to Egypt, to slavery, because, man, they had really good fish that was really tasty in Egypt.
Between beatings.
I mean, it seems like, you would think, what's wrong with these people? But they had a slave mentality. It's hard to break from the hurts and the pains and the things that have defined us for so long. And so this was a real question. I mean, this man had made he'd been trapped. But Yeshua was saying to this man, listen, do you want to be made well? Do you, I know you felt trapped. You felt like nothing ever changes for you. And it's interesting because when Yeshua asked the man, does he want to be made well? It shows you he was testing what was in his heart, because the man doesn't respond yes. He responds with a reason why he hasn't been healed yet. I've got no one to take me down and put me in the water when the waters are stirred and people. That's not what Yeshua asked.
Yeah, that's right. And in 38 years, Rabbi, if you wanted to get in the water, you'd get there somehow. You could figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, again, but what's also interesting is that 38 is the numerical value in Hebrew of the root for sickness.
Wow.
In Hebrew.
Oh, wow.
So literally 38 is the numerical value for sickness or weakness. And this man represents those who have weak faith, who are physically and emotionally and relationally sick and hurting and just kind of stuck. But the good news is that Yeshua has the power to heal. He's the ultimate hope dealer. I mean, hope is the belief that your future can be better than your past. You don't have to remain where you are. Yeshua can heal you and give you hope.
I love that. We want to continue to expand this ministry. We want to continue to take this message of Jesus and end-time prophecy to people all around the world. Millions of people watch us right now, but we need your support to be able to grow this ministry. If this has touched you, if this has been a blessing to you, would you help us reach more people? Go to give.endtimes.com. You can give a one-time gift. Nothing's too small, nothing's too large. Some of you may have been blessed. You have the opportunity to really be a blessing to other people. I'm asking you to consider giving your most generous gift. You can also give a recurring gift. You can make it a monthly gift, which is a huge blessing to us as a ministry, just to know that that money is going to come in every month to help us to expand and to do everything that we're doing right now. For all of you who have supported us, I want to say thank you for all that you've helped us to do, to go around the world encouraging people about the times we're living in, sharing end-time prophecy and sharing Jesus. And I'm asking you to consider, those of you who have and those of you who haven't, please consider giving your most generous gift right now. Give.endtimes.com, and you can give your most generous gift there. And listen, if you're not subscribed to this channel on YouTube, be sure and hit the subscribe button. Also, the like button. Subscribe means you're going to get everything that we come out with here on YouTube. The like button means other people are going to find out about it. So if you would, take just a minute, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. God bless you. Now, the number 7 is the number that, 7 days of creation, just all kinds of sevens in the Bible. But you kind of come from a different perspective related to the number 7. What's your perspective?
Yeah, it's what's interesting with the number 7 is that a number of different things. So one is there's 7 in a number of different places in the New Testament that are significant. Another miracle that we talk about is the second miracle at Cana, right, which is the healing of the royal official's son.
Right.
And what's interesting is he says that he heals his son at the 7th hour. Yeshua spoke the word from a distance, and the man's son was healed at the exact time he spoke the word, he finds out, and it's at the 7th hour. What's interesting, the 7th hour, according to Jewish tradition, according to the Midrash, is the hour that God breathed the breath of life into Adam.
Wow.
And so Yeshua is the source of life, right? He's breathing life into this man's son, right? We also know 7 is the number of completion and wholeness. Yeshua is bringing a complete healing and wholeness to this man's son. 7 is the number of the Messianic age, according to the rabbis, right? This world is likened to the 6 days of creation. This world is like the 6 days, and when the Messiah comes, it's like the 7th day, which is the time that's the Messianic kingdom in Jewish thought is a time that's known as all Shabbat, right? So Shabbat is seen as a time of rest. So 7 is associated with rest. It's associated with the kingdom. It's associated with trust. We see this in a number of places, right? God tells the children of Israel in the wilderness, you'll collect manna for 6 days, enough for the day. You can't save it for the next day or else it's going to go putrid. But then on the 7th day, he tells them the reverse. He tells them you have to collect enough manna for 2 days, for the Friday and Saturday, so you don't have to work on the Sabbath. It's teaching them about trust, about provision. We see this again on the next level when the children of Israel go into the land. It's the Shemitah, the sabbatical year. Right. God tells the children of Israel, you'll work the land 6 years, but the 7th year you're to let the land lie fallow and not work the land. Think about how much trust that would take to not farm when your food was dependent upon that.
And they never did it.
No, they never did. And they went into exile, Book of Daniel, 70 times 7, because they did it. But 7 is about trusting God to possess your promise, even in the face of the impossible and improbable. That's why there's 7 types of Canaanite people in the land, including giants. When they go to take the land of Jericho, march around the city 7th day. On the 7th day, you're to march around it 7 times and blow the shofar. Okay, so victory is connected to the number 7, that God will give success from our enemies and our obstacles, even when it seems like crazy. I mean, just march around the walls, really? But that's how God operates. There's 7 days of Passover. 7 is a number of miracle and multiplication. Yeshua tells his disciples, hey, we got to feed the crowds that have come and hear me speak. And they're literally in the wilderness, like Israel was in the wilderness for those 40 years, and God provided for them in the wilderness. And so Yeshua is going to do a greater miracle. He takes 5 loaves and 2 fish, totals of 7, multiplies it to feed the people. And that's the question. Will we trust God? The 7 is about trusting God, resting in God to provide and do a lot with the little that you have. And I'll never forget, we had this event, one of our first ministry events with Fusion. There wasn't enough food because more people came than we expected. I guess we had little faith about how many people are going to show up.
I've done that before.
And all we could do was pray.
Yeah.
All we could do is pray, Lord, multiply it like the bread and the fish. And God literally multiplied it.
Wow.
And we actually had leftovers. I was like, all right, Lord, amazing.
A lot of times we see God as kind of the slave driver. Imagine that you get 1 year off every 7 years. I mean, that's pretty fantastic. I found out over the years, first of all, he's not the slave driver I am. We're the ones who won't stop. But the other thing is, and you said this exactly right, it is an issue of trust, is that if we would obey him and enter into his rest and trust him. I was all stressed out one time in the ministry, and the Lord told me to go play golf. I had been so stressed out, I hadn't played golf in years, and the Lord literally spoke to me and said, go play golf. And I thought to myself, I can't, because the church needs me. And the Lord spoke this to my heart and said, I'll take care of the church. And I was thinking to myself, well, do you know how? And of course, that's the stupidest thought in the whole world. But the Bible says that God gives to his beloved while they sleep. Yeah. And so when we're obedient to the Lord and trust him, he's able to do more in 6 than we can do in 7 if we just trust him. That's a big lesson there.
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the things with the whole taking the children out of Egypt and connected to the number 7 in the manna is, part of the immaturity, part of the slave mentality of Israel is that they learned during their times of slavery in Egypt to look to the hands of people instead of looking to the hand of God.
Yeah.
They were dependent upon their human masters instead of their heavenly master and father, right? And so he's trying to break them of that slave mentality to say, listen, don't trust in people, right? I mean, your trust, your future, your destiny isn't determined by people. It's determined by me, and therefore I'm going to teach you to trust me. So part of the reason for the Sabbath, part of the reason for the sabbatical year is that if you can't take a rest, you're still a slave in Egypt.
Wow.
You're still a slave to the material. You're still a slave to the physical. You're living on the level of the natural. You're living on the level of this world. You're not living on the level of the supernatural, which is the life that we're meant to have in Jesus. Right? We're not ordinary anymore. The water into wine is ordinary to extraordinary. When he touches your life, you become something else. You're no longer just subject to this world. You can rise above just these things. And so I think that's part of the significance of the number 7. It's like God can do something supernatural with you if you trust him. If you give him your loaves, if you give him your fish, if you say, I'm not going to be a slave, but I'm going to choose to have faith and trust God. I know, Jesus, you got this.
That's fantastic. One more question, and I want to encourage people. This is Rabbi Jason Sobel. It says, Signs and Secrets of the Messiah, a fresh look at the miracles of Jesus. It's fascinating. But you talk about when Jesus did miracles on the Sabbath, the Pharisees took offense at that, but you believe that was prophetic. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, so I think that part of it has to do with when they get upset at him for healing on the Shabbat. One of those times is, again, the healing of the man at the pool of Bethesda. It says he actually healed on John 5 says he went up on a holiday, right? And I believe the key to understanding the miracle on a greater level is understanding which holiday it was. And I believe we get into the book, but quickly, I believe the holiday was Pentecost, Shavuot. It was the day that God gave the 10 commandments at Mount Sinai. And according to Jewish tradition, he gave the commandments on a Shabbat. But part of what happened as well, as he was preparing to give the people the 10 commandments, Jewish tradition says he healed everyone who was lame, everyone who was deaf, and everyone who was blind. Because God was entering into the people. He was entering into a covenant for all time with the people.
Right.
He didn't want anyone to say, well, I didn't hear that, or I couldn't see that, or I didn't agree to that, so therefore it doesn't apply to me. And so he wants to give his whole word to a whole people so that they can wholly enter into the covenant. So here's the point. Yeshua does the same miracle that was done on the first Pentecost. Yeshua is saying, I'm only doing what I saw my Father do.
Wow.
The Father did this on Sabbath when he brought you out of Egypt on this holiday. I'm only doing what he did. And so again, the question to you, leaders of his generation, are you going to be like the 10 spies who gave a bad report and again didn't enter into the promise but died in their unbelief? Or are you going to have faith that I'm doing what my Father did and enter into the fullness of the promise?
Wow.
And I think part of the beautiful thing here too is that Yeshua does these miracles to fulfill prophecy, to build our faith, but he also promises that greater things than these we can do. I believe part of the importance of understanding and looking at the miracles of Jesus is that if we are going to impact the world, we can't just be about the natural. We have to operate and live from the place of the supernatural, the power of the Spirit. And we have to take those words serious. Greater things than these you will do. So Yeshua heals this man on Pentecost. Well, guess what? Peter follows in his footsteps, and in the book of Acts around Pentecost, there's a man sitting at the gate, and he lays hands on him, and he says, silver and gold have I none, but I have in the name of Jesus. Rise, take up your bed and walk. He heals the man who couldn't walk, doing exactly what he saw Jesus do.
Wow.
And I can tell you, I'll just tell you this one thing real quick. When I first came to faith, one of the first things that happened was I got a telephone call from a friend of mine who was homeless, who needed to have both legs amputated. I went to the hospital to see him, laid my hands on him. I just read the book of Acts. Jesus said we could do these things. Prayed for him. He needed to have both legs amputated from frostbite. The doctors thought there was no hope. God healed his legs. He got up and he walked out of the hospital, came to faith in the Lord.
Wow.
Listen, we can do the greater things than these. It is possible.
Absolutely. Love that. Yeah, you're exactly right. And you know, I heard someone say one time, one of the reasons that it doesn't happen is we don't believe it'll happen. You know, so we don't go to the hospital and pray for people, but he received Christ.
Please subscribe to Pastor Jimmy Evans' channel to receive the latest videos.
you.